people are always whining in my comments, you know. You call yourself the Amazing Atheist, but you never make videos about atheism anymore, man. What's up with that? I think most people understand the reason why. It's because there isn't a single theistic argument that hasn't been refuted a billion times by me and countless other YouTube atheists. But I've always said, hey, if some new arguments come along, I'll respond to them. Well, if you're one of those people who whines about me never talking about atheism, today is your lucky fucking day because I've discovered a website called Escaping Atheism. The title alone is really ludicrous. Normally when someone talks about escaping a religion or ideology, it's something like Escaping Mormonism, where the story is something like, I was a child bride and the church turned my whole family against me when I left. Or Escaping Scientology, which consists of something like, they locked me in a tower and made me a slave, and when I finally did escape, they harassed me and made me fear for my life. Or Escaping Islam, where the story is, I left Islam and now I'm considered an apostate and my own family wants me dead. To act like atheism is anything like these groups is ludicrous. The worst thing that's going to happen to you if you go from being an atheist to not being an atheist anymore is that I'll call you a dumbass. So you didn't do something so dramatic as escape, okay? Let's get that out of the way before anything else. Now, the site's sidebar offers us an option to donate, saying, please help us in our efforts to challenge dogmatic, bullying, mind-closing, soul-crushing, culturally toxic atheism. Let's go down that list of adjectives real quick. Dogmatic is the first one. So how can a religious person accuse atheism of being dogmatic? I mean, some atheists might try to turn atheism into something dogmatic. I'm looking at you, Steve Shives and P.Z. Myers. But most atheists are atheists, at least partly, because they want to be free from dogmatic thinking. Bullying. Well, this is one of those words that has lost its meaning through wanton and careless overuse. A bully used to mean someone who hurts and harasses you on a regular basis just to make his or herself feel better. But now, a bully is anyone who dares to call you out on your own bullshit. Mind closing. How is atheism mind closing? Almost any atheist you talk to is open to any new idea or possibility. They just demand evidence. A person who believes any whimsical notion that enters their head is not open-minded, they're stupid. Soul-crushing. Well, we don't have souls, but even if you take the less literal interpretation of that and just view it as sort of like breaking a person's spirit, atheism does the opposite of that. Atheism is about rejecting the soul-crushing decrees of theism. I get letters all the time, for example, from gay kids living in fundamentalist households that are putting them in the soul-crushing position of being forced to deny their own sexuality because it contradicts the fairy tale of their parents. Atheism is a force of liberation for those kids. Culturally toxic. I'm not even sure what that one's supposed to mean, so as far as I'm concerned, it's just gibberish like all the rest. Now that we're done shitting on the sidebar, let's take a look at the actual contents of the site. Let's take a look at the arguments against atheism. The first article that you will see is entitled Atheism Cult's Catalog of Anti-Theist Psychological Tactics Draft 2 by Dean Esme, who you may remember as the fat neckbeard MRA well, I guess he's never actually done much, but he is a fat neckbeard MRA and people do know who he is. But this isn't about him. This is about the arguments being presented. And as far as arguments go, this article offers, I was going to say next to nothing, but the actual answer is nothing. The entire article, and I'm not shitting you when I say this, is nothing more than a list of things that Dean feels atheists say too much. That's literally it. He offers no criticisms of any of the sentiments presented in the article. I'll give you some examples of some. Atheists always say, you can't accept that science has defeated your Bronze Age superstition. Yeah, well, atheists say that because it's true. Here's another one. No matter what you say, evolution is still right. Yeah, what's your argument against that? Scientific fact doesn't change just because you post some crybaby I was bullied by atheists bullshit on your blog. Evolution did still happen. What is your fucking point, sir? So the entirety of the first article you see when you land on the Escaping Atheism page is a non-argument. It might as well be called Escaping Round Earthers and start off with a list of things round earthers always say. Yeah, you guys, round earthers are always saying shit like, a flat earth is a ludicrous idea of the scientifically illiterate, and we can see the round earth from space, or we have satellites in orbit, we know the earth is round. Fucking round earth idiots! So predictable. They're such a cult. They all say the same things. Woo, round earthers. Woo, they're a social cancer. Flat earth all the way. The second article is called Disturbing Questions to Ask Atheists. And this is the one where you really realize just how terrible of a writer Dean Esme is, because not a lick of this makes even a fragment of fucking sense. Here's what he does. He asks atheists a series of questions that most atheists are just going to answer yes to, or maybe yes with some caveats, and religious people are going to be more inclined to answer no. The questions are things like, number one, atheism is not a belief, it's a lack of belief. It is totally non-ideological. Atheism says nothing whatsoever about your personality or your views. Atheism is about science, logic, reason, and evidence. Religion is the opposite of those things. And so on and so forth. It's just a bunch of stuff like that. So there's nothing even vaguely disturbing about these questions. No atheist would have even the smallest bit of difficulty answering them. So he shows us these questions, then he shows us the answers that some guy named Will gave to the questions, and then nothing. He makes no attempt to explain what is wrong with the questions or atheism's answers to them. He just sort of presents them and expects us to be indignant. The most he ever says about what these questions are supposed to illustrate is, I had some questions for him that I was certain would convince a rational person that there is something intensely ideological and rather predictable about the way atheists think. So this is basically exactly the same as the previous article. It's just a big, dumb, distracting way of saying, aren't atheists so predictable? Well, yeah, we predictably hold truth to be true and bullshit to be bullshit, just as you predictably hold bullshit to be true and truth to be bullshit. So the first two articles on the site offer the same tepid, unconvincing argument against atheists. We're predictable. Just like all these math wonks so predictably all say that 1 + 1 = 2, or how these photographers predictably go around taking pictures of things. It's a cult, you guys. It's all just a bunch of fucking cults. The third article on the page is just a link to some super long and super boring and pretentious post on another blog, and the article is entitled Plato's Cave Image / God and the Atheist. The first part of this post just relays to us the allegory of Plato's cave, all while the author makes sure to deeply smell her own farts. Just listen to this.
Just as man cannot turn his eyes alone around to look behind him without turning his whole body around, a man cannot turn the eye of his soul, his impronounceable ancient Greek word, around without turning his whole soul, his another unpronounceable ancient Greek word, around as well. This is the fundamental Platonic teaching that turning one's intellect the right way requires the comprehensive right ordering of one's whole soul by virtue. This is something we moderns often overlook, because we tend to conceptualize knowledge as a kind of technical mastery, the kind of thing Descartes taught us to do. The kind of thing natural scientists do, which, as mere technique, is largely indifferent to virtue. But virtue or goodness is not irrelevant to our capacity to obtain wisdom. Or this other unpronounceable fucking ancient Greek word. There are certain things that those with disordered souls simply cannot comprehend. Everything depends on one being turned the right way. Some kinds of knowledge, that is to say, are not existentially neutral. They depend upon the right disposition of our souls. Ethical knowledge, or knowledge of what is good, is particularly like this. Bad people are particularly blind to goodness and to their own badness, which is both a consequence of their badness as well as a further cause, such that evil, like depression, is a self-feeding cycle.
Yeah, it's that kind of blog post. Some rogue academic rambling about their view of what virtue is and name-dropping Descartes and inserting ancient Greek words just so we all know how much smarter she is than we could ever be. According to her bio, she does have a PhD in philosophy, so I guess my high school dropout ass should be shaking in my boots with fear on taking on such a towering intellect. But I'll do my best, you guys. The second part of her article is when she actually begins to address atheism, so let me give you an overview of that segment. The author starts by giving us a much wordier and more pretentious version of the same argument we've already encountered before, that atheism is predictable.
They all manage to believe very mundane and predictable things. Almost always some kind of naturalism, wherein scientific knowledge has an almost mystical pride of place, an obsession with empirical evidence, in Platonic and Nietzschean terms, an inability to rise to levels of thought above the animal senses, what Hegel calls picture thinking, and a host of utterly conventional post-Christian beliefs, to which they really have no genuine epistemic right.
Okay, so you guys are aware that proving that atheism is predictable and proving that it's incorrect are two different things, right? And did you guys know... I'm not talking to them anymore. I'm talking to all you atheists out there. Did you guys know that we have no epistemic right to our beliefs? Shit. I hope the epistemic police don't bust down my door and take me to philosophy jail. Oh no, I don't have a right to these beliefs. Oh, the epistemology's just not there, man. It's just not there. Oh. And from here, I'm afraid her article veers into what I consider to be a very typical Christian position. One might even call it predictable. The lesson of the cave is, you cannot see the sun. That is the good. That is God, without 1, getting free of the chains of conventional opinion, and 2, making with help the journey up the long, steep upward way, a process that at best will take years. Wisdom is not cheaply bought. In other words, if you want proof of God, you have to spend years seeking out God, and it's a long process of soul searching. Ha! That's what it is, soul searching. Would the idiot who wrote this pretentious fucking drivel be convinced if I told her, hey, you might not believe in leprechauns now, but if you spend years trying to convince yourself they're real, you can eventually do the mental gymnastics to believe in leprechauns. I think she would probably consider that to be a waste of time, but that's only because she doesn't understand how meaningful leprechauns could be to her life once she simply takes the multi-year journey towards belief in leprechauns. Her article goes on and on and on and on and on and on until you just want to bash your fucking brains out on the desk. But it never really says much of anything new. It just reiterates her sorry excuse for an argument, which can be boiled down to, atheists want proof of God, but they're blind to God's truth. It's really just a big, elaborate, pompous, and contrived way of saying I don't have any actual evidence, but if you weren't such a dumbass, unenlightened atheist fuck, you would see that God is real. To which I say, give me a fucking break. The next article on the site is called Why Atheism is Ridiculous. It starts with this gem of a paragraph. Nowadays, atheists define their position as lack of a belief in a god or gods. This definition itself is idiotic. By defining their position as lack of belief, that means that bricks, dust motes, and people in comas are atheists. Oh, wow. So if you're going to write an article about how ridiculous someone else is, maybe you don't start off with the most ridiculous paragraph ever written. Just a thought. Just a fucking thought. He goes on to say, if we add a reasonable clause to this, changing it to atheism is lack of a belief in God or gods in an agent that is capable of such a belief. Let me just stop you there, because no one but your autistic ass needed that reasonable clause. Because it goes without saying. When someone says atheism is a lack of belief in a god or gods, no one but your retarded ass thinks that that encompasses inanimate objects and shit. If someone asks you for an ice cream cone, do you say, ahem? That's inaccurate. The cone itself is not made of ice cream. The ice cream is in the cone. Therefore, you should say, I want ice cream in a cone, not I want an ice cream cone. And the best thing about this tism-riddled fucking weirdo is that as he's being this retarded, he's also being infinitely condescending, and I fucking love that. There's literally nothing I like better than listening to someone who's as dumb as dirt, but also condescends to you like they're the smartest person to ever fucking exist. Anyway, I digress. He goes on to say, if we add a reasonable clause to this, changing it to atheism is a lack of belief in God or gods and an agent capable of such belief, we end up with a psychological property. Psychological properties are uninteresting for philosophical discussion. Oh, they are? Why is that? By what logic do you figure that, sir? What's your argument for that proposition? Psychological properties are extremely interesting for philosophical discussions. In fact, I struggle to think of a more fascinating facet of philosophical discussions than the psychological properties of human beings. But you go on. I lack a belief in God. Well, we do believe in God. So what? Brilliant argument. Do you hold that lack of belief to be rationally justified? Well, yes, obviously I do. They claim this lack of belief doesn't have any additional impacts on other beliefs. No, everything a person believes or doesn't believe is going to affect their behavior and their morality and a whole host of other things. Which, by the way, is the reason why psychological properties are interesting in philosophical discussions. Moron. So he then presents a list of things that atheists are likely to believe. I'm going to go through them one by one and offer up my thoughts on whether they fit me or not. That matter is all that exists. Well, matter and energy, but matter is energy, so really I believe that energy is all that exists. But I'm open to the possibility that something else exists. I just haven't seen any evidence of anything other than that existing. I mean, other things, there's like conceptual things like love or just thoughts in general. But these arise from physical, biological properties, and if every being capable of love were physically destroyed, then love itself would also be destroyed. So even though we're talking about conceptual realities that only exist within us, they're still tethered to the physical reality of biological organisms. That theists are delusional, irrational, brainwashed, or lying about their beliefs. Yeah, I agree with that. Science is our most reliable way of knowing truth because it often overturns itself. Well, I agree, but science overturning itself is not the reason. It's the mechanism for how science overturns itself that impresses me, because science is all about building models that can accurately predict the behavior of reality. If we're using a model like Newtonian gravity and it works, we view it as true. But if something comes along like, oh, holy shit, Newtonian theory doesn't explain quantum gravity, then we're still looking for the answer. And one day, someone will come up with a hypothesis of quantum gravity, and it'll be tested, and if it turns out to be true, then it becomes a theory, and we now have a deeper understanding of what gravity is. That's so much more reliable to me than the idea that we're all subject to this immutable and unchanging God who wants our servitude. And no matter how many philosophers you name drop and how many ancient Greek words you sprinkle into your ideas, it's still just going to be some bullshit that a caveman, con man came up with to control his fellow primates. Oh, Thag, talk to Mountain God! Mountain God say, give shiny rock Thag! Defer to Thag in all matters. Thag talk to Mountain God. If you defy Thag, Mountain God angry. I love that all of you fucking pretentious, snooty, wannabe intellectuals are trying your damnedest to defend something that some proto-human came up with to control his fellow fucking cavemen. It's kind of sad, really, don't you think? If God exists, human beings are intelligent, wise, and moral enough to pass judgment on God's motives and actions. Look, it takes neither wisdom nor an astonishingly well-developed sense of morality to condemn God as a tyrant. If he were real and the Bible is accurate, then he is the greatest force for evil in the entire cosmos. Even the likes of Adolf Hitler could look down on such a loveless and wicked being and spit on him. This is a being that you claim created a race of sentient beings, and then expected them to be his slaves, demanded their love, and cast them into eternal suffering if they don't kiss his ass thoroughly enough. I view such a being as small, petty, and disgusting. If God does exist, then we should immediately start looking for ways to kill him. Luckily for us, he does not exist. It is appropriate to worry about the effects of religion on people, but there's no reason to worry about the effects of atheism. True. Morality has no objective basis, and some form of preference utilitarianism is the appropriate moral framework. I mean, Sam Harris, one of the founders of New Atheism, has a book out about objective morality, so a lot of atheists do believe in objective morality. I am not one of them. I believe that morality is completely subjective. Like earlier when I said a moment ago that your God is evil and disgusting if he does exist, I'm sure you feel differently. You feel like he's a great dude and every horrible thing he's described as doing is totally justified because we're just not even fit to judge him in all of his magnificence and glory. So morality is subjective. It will always be subjective. If there were an objective morality, then that would be tremendously convenient, but there is no mechanism by which any moral code is objectively true. Well, he then goes on to make the argument of, well, if there's no God and no objective morality, then that's really a bit confusing and tough, so that can't be true. Well, I don't know if you've noticed, asshole, but the world is tough and confusing, and it's precisely because there is no objective moral truth. Anyway, he ends with this delightful bit of stupidity. Atheism acts like a cult, far more than religions do. If you don't believe us, try tweeting the following to your atheist friends on Twitter. Theism is as reasonable of a position to take as atheism. I'm not sure if God exists, but the religious tradition has brought us science, so it can't be all bad. I'm not sure what God is, but theists might know, and if they do, maybe they should worship God. Nobody believes in sky fairies. We should stop using that one, you guys. That's totally wrong. Yeah, if you tweet those things at atheists will call you a dumbass, yes, but that's because you are. But my favorite part is when you say atheism acts more like a cult than religions do. Okay, you're a moron. And I don't think you know the definition of a cult, so let me help you out. Cult, noun, a system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object. A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. A misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. So here's the question, what object or person do us atheists shower with a religious abundance of veneration and devotion? Like, I like Richard Dawkins, and I like Neil deGrasse Tyson and shit, but I'm not devoted to them, I don't view them as infallible, I don't worship them. Atheism has no sacred objects, no rites or rituals, no punishment for leaving, no threats of damnation and torment for those who disagree with us. I mean, you're saying we're a cult because we think science is more true than your book of bullshit fairy tales? Get the fuck out of here! And there's only one more article left on this shit website. Welcome to Escaping Atheism. But it really doesn't advance any sort of argument. It just bitches about atheists and how awful we fucking are because we don't believe in God. So I'll read you a little bit from that, I guess. At Escaping Atheism, we think atheism's a terrible cultural poison. It's a mind-numbing ideology that brings nothing good and much bad to the culture. It doesn't help science, and it isn't scientific. It isn't particularly intelligent, and doesn't make you more intelligent either. Furthermore, atheism is deserving of much criticism. It's warped into a cult that, like feminism, poisons everything it touches. Science is poisoned by atheism. Art is poisoned by atheism. Polite conversation is destroyed by atheism. Rational discourse is destroyed by atheism. Whoa, okay. Well, here at the Amazing Atheist, I think that atheism is an antidote to a cultural poison called religion. It's a mind-opening ideology that frees people from the bondage of religious dogma. It teaches us to respect science and the scientific method and to base our beliefs on what is verifiably true. It unshackles the human intellect by freeing us from the mental constraints and rigid thought control that has been the hallmark of almost every religion since the inception of faith. Furthermore, atheism welcomes your meager and flimsy criticisms because we have nothing to fear from pseudo-intellectuals whose main argument is that atheism is too predictable. Well, I'm willing to bet that you didn't predict that it would only take one atheist to destroy everything you've tried. Emphasis on fucking tried to build here. But that's exactly what just happened. Atheism does not, as you insist, destroy rational discourse. It destroys bullshit. And bullshit is all I was able to find on this webpage. So I hope that you will not take it as an insult when I say that it's not atheism you need to escape. It's your own stupidity. There is no God. There is only me. And I'm the Amazing Atheist. Peace the fuck out.
TJ, you're going to hell.
Hey. Oh, sorry. We watched Ghostbusters.
We did. We're still traumatized from it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched the Ghostbusters movie. We gave it the stoner version of the MST3K treatment.
Yeah, watch the whole movie and kind of give our running commentary on it.
Yeah, so if you guys, I mean, like, we've got really positive reviews from people who've bought it. I've had a ton of people tweet me and say that it was worth it. I've had a ton of people comment on the video and say that it was worth it, and they're glad they watched it through our eyes rather than having to sit through and try to watch it themselves. So if you really want an idea of how bad the movie is, but you don't necessarily want to watch the fucking thing, this is probably the best way to go about figuring out what the plot is and what all happens in it without having to sit down and actually watch the piece of shit.
If you're going to subject yourself to it, why not bring us along with you,
yeah,
right?
We'll help you. We'll be your guides through the shitty movie.
Yeah.
And we'll make jokes. The movie's not going to make you laugh, but
No.
we will. I think there's at least 3 or 4 big laugh moments and probably a few more chuckles in there. So if you guys want to check that out, you can do so down below. We have a link to that. It's $2.99 for rental, $5.99 to own the fucking thing. And what more can I say? Just go get it.
Go get it. What are you doing here? Go buy it.
Bitch.